Detective Coons, I know we didn't really establish yesterday. I know that you're retired. Is that okay if I call you Detective Coons, or would you prefer something else?
Detective is fine.
Okay, thank you. Detective Coons, yesterday you testified that no stippling was found as a result of the shot on my husband's chest. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, none was found.
Okay. So would it surprise you if the medical examiner expressed in his defense interview that there was stippling found in that shot?
Would it surprise me that he had found it? Not necessarily based on the information.
Okay. Would it surprise you if the medical examiner expressed that the shooter would have had to be 2 to 4 feet away for that stippling to be present?
And this is from your interview or from the report?
From the interview.
Okay. No, that actually would still be consistent with my observations at the scene.
Okay, great. If someone very muscular like my husband were 2 to 4 feet away from you holding up a bat, would you consider that a threat?
And I would object to speculation, relevance.
Your Honor, I'm asking for his opinion as a professional and as a firearms expert.
He's not, okay.
That goes to the ultimate
hold on.
decision.
The objection is sustained and it calls for a legal conclusion.
It calls for a legal conclusion?
Yes, move on.
Were you present, Detective, when my husband was shot?
No, ma'am.
Is there a video recording of it?
To my knowledge, no.
So is your opinion then an educated guess about what really happened?
It's based on known facts.
Okay. Were you aware, Detective, that my husband and my brother were very good friends?
No, ma'am, I didn't know the relationship.
Did you know that they hung out and played golf together?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm going somewhere with this.
Oh, I
My
guess,
follow-up question will explain.
I guess you can answer if you knew that they played golf.
I did not know.
In all of your investigation of my life, you never came across this information?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Are you familiar with my husband's wishes for his funeral?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Did you learn in your investigation that he named my brother Alex as one of his 5 best friends?
And I'm going to object again to relevance.
Sustained.
Did you read the reports in this case?
I did not read all of the reports in this case. No, I've read mine and I've authored mine, but I have not read the other reports.
None of the other reports except for your own?
That's correct.
Okay. Detective, are you familiar with the follow-up report you wrote dated July 29th, 2019?
You're going to have to be a little bit more specific.
Did you review your reports in preparation for your testimony here today?
Yes, but I have not memorized the dates of when I made a report entry.
Okay. Would you like to see it to refresh your recollection?
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Does that look like a true and correct copy of your report, Detective?
I believe it is.
And those Bates pages run from what to what, please?
They're obscured in the footnotes of it, but it looks like it's 126 through 131.
Okay. And on the last page of your report, on Bates page 131, you explain what a shored wound is.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you read that underlined portion?
I'm going to object to hearsay to reading it.
Sustained. You can ask him to explain what a shored wound is.
Okay. Can you explain to us what the shored wound is that you explained in your report?
Yes, a shored wound would be a wound created as an exit wound where the projectile is exiting the body and the body is either up against a firm surface or firm material like spandex type thing. That's how it's been explained to me.
Okay. That's fair. You said held in place by tight clothing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you, in fact, and it says in your report, did you, in fact, collect my husband's clothing?
Yes.
Okay. And you took the clothing, it says, to the property storage facility. Is that correct?
Yes, it went to a drying cage.
Okay. Detective, are you familiar with bamboo clothing?
I can't say that I am.
Okay. Were you aware that on July 29th, 2019, my husband was wearing a $200 bamboo workout shirt?
Objection to relevance.
He can answer if he knows.
I have no idea what the cost is.
Are you aware that bamboo is a heavy-duty fabric not to rip or tear except under extreme conditions?
I've not done any research into bamboo fabric.
Okay. So could this fabric of his shirt have caused the wound to be shored?
It could have been a contributor, but it would not have been in this particular case.
Why so?
The body would have been on the floor where the bullet defect was in the floor.
So you just said in your report earlier that a shored wound could be caused by tight clothing. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're saying that could not have happened in this case?
The shirt did not appear to be tight clothing to me.
Well, it was made of bamboo, as we established, right? Is that correct?
I am taking your word for it. I do not know that it's a bamboo shirt.
Okay. And you did not investigate that at all?
No, ma'am.
But you had the shirt in your possession,
It was seized as evidence, yes.
and you never checked what kind of fabric it was,
No, ma'am.
and you never checked if that could be a possibility,
No, ma'am.
and you knew that spandex was kind of a material that could make that kind of shored mark that you just mentioned, correct?
It would have to be super tight clothing.
Super tight clothing.
Yes.
Or a fabric that's even stronger than the spandex that you mentioned.
The strength of the fabric, I don't believe, has a huge play in it unless it is form-fitting and compressing the skin, much like a hard surface or firm surface would.
Okay. But what you said in your report was that held in place by tight clothing could cause a shored wound.
As has been explained to me, yes.
Okay. Detective, in your report, you mention let's see. So it is possible that his shirt could have caused the wound and not the floor.
I'm going to object to asked and answered.
I'll let him answer.
I don't know if it's possible or not for that particular shirt to have caused a shored wound.
Because you did not do any investigation about the shirt.
Because the shirt did not appear to be form-fitting and very tight.
Did it cover over the shoulder where the wound was?
It was a full T-shirt at the time.
That's what I'm saying. So was the T-shirt, where the wound was on his back, where the bullet exited, was his shirt covering that part of his body?
Certainly.
Okay. Was there a hole in the shirt at that location?
Yes, ma'am.
How big was the hole?
The size of the bullet?
So small. Small.
Fabric stretches and contracts, so it was a bullet size.
Okay. So when you had this shirt and you saw the bullet hole, it was after the shirt had been cut off by the firefighters. Is that correct?
It hadn't been cut off. It had been cut down the middle, down the front,
So just the front was cut. So the back was intact?
minus the defects that we have seen from the bullet exits, yes.
Okay. So you were able to measure that. Do you have a measurement for those bullet holes in the shirt?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So it is possible that his shirt could have caused the wound, the shored wound.
Object, again, that we've asked and answered this 3 times
Sustained.
now.
Okay, so is it possible that any shirt could have caused a shored wound in any kind of,
And I'm going to object to foundation as to any overly broad.
as an expert,
Let me rule on the objection.
okay, I'm sorry.
All right. I'll sustain the objection.
As an expert and in your professional opinion, could that fabric of his shirt that he was wearing that day caused a shored wound?
Again, I'm going to object to asked and answered multiple times.
Sustained.
In the last paragraph of your report, Detective, you indicate that you were able to confirm your suspicion of the body position at the scene. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you mean by suspicion?
Well, at the time, I couldn't see through his body to see the full trajectories, so I did need the information from the autopsy. The trajectory rods helped with that, as well as the doctor's statements. All of that combined did give me the 2 different bullet paths.
Okay. And then, can you tell me, Detective, what happened to my husband's shirt? Do you know where it is now?
It is in evidence, as far as I'm aware.
And it's, when you looked at it, where was it?
The last I physically saw that shirt was when I handed it off to a crime scene tech to put into a drying cage with the instructions, once it was dry, to have it moved into the property facility.
And so, did you see it after it was in the property facility?
No, ma'am, I have not.
So you saw it before it was dried, is that correct?
While it was wet from the medical examiner's office, yes.
And that's when you examined it?
I had seen it at the scene as well.
And then, did you ever examine it?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you saw it twice.
That's fair.
Okay. So you didn't test it for anything?
I did not.
Did anyone test it for anything?
I
that
do
you're
not
aware
know.
of? That you're aware of?
I do not know.
So you're not aware of it?
Correct. I do not know if anybody else tested it.
Okay. Was the wood floor tested for any fragments of the projectile?
It was actually seized, so it was not tested.
And what does seized mean?
We cut it out of the floor and kept it.
Right, and then was it tested after it was seized?
No, ma'am.
So the wood floor plank that was taken from my residence was never tested for any fragments of the projectile?
The projectile was intact, minus a deformity to it.
Okay. But there wasn't any reason, are you saying there was no reason to test it?
There had been no implication or indication that there was a request for it to be tested.
And you wouldn't do that to see if the projectile actually hit the floor?
No, ma'am. All the other circumstances and information that led up to that decision to seize the floor, everything appeared that it was going to be related to the actual bullet that passed through your husband's body and struck the floor.
Wouldn't testing the floor actually be the easiest way to be sure that the bullet hit the floor?
Not necessarily would it leave anything behind. Like I said, the bullet was a full metal jacket. It was still intact. There had been a significant amount of blood that had pooled in it. I do not know if there would be residue left behind in it for testing.
Fair. Okay. Was the projectile tested for any marks from the floor?
No, ma'am.
Were you aware that this was a rental house that we lived in?
I believe I'd heard that.
Okay. Were you aware that we had only lived there for about 3 weeks prior to this incident?
I knew it was a short time period, but I did not know the actual duration.
Did you know that? You know that by the time you wrote this report, right?
I don't recall knowing the exact time frame that you had lived there.
Okay. So the defect in the floor of the rental house that we lived in could have already been there before this incident. Is that correct?
Not in my opinion, no.
But it could have.
An objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
So of all the divots that we saw yesterday in the pictures on the floor, it could not have been there beforehand?
And again, asked and answered.
I'll let him answer. Go ahead.
The divots I believe you're referring to were extremely smaller than the actual defect, which was still relatively fresh and not sealed like the other divots were.
Okay, can we see? These were previously published, so we can use them, right?
Yeah.
Can we look at
Just
these?
refer to the exhibit number, please.
Okay. Just put it on. Detective, can you see that? I can't see that very well from there. So, in Exhibit 57, Detective,
I'm looking.
this, where my pin is pointing,
Yes, ma'am?
that's the defect that you're referring to where the bullet struck. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And these defects were already previously at the residence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And do they look that much significantly different than that to you?
Yes, they do.
What do you think the measurement difference in that is, in your professional opinion?
There is no scale in this photograph. It would be difficult for me to give you an estimate.
So in your estimation, this defect is much larger than this defect. Is that correct?
The second defect you're pointing to appears to be wood grain indentations. The other is an actual defect in the board.
Okay. Thank you. But this defect, this piece of wood that was cut out, was not tested. Is that correct?
Again, asked and answered.
Technically correct, but I'll let him answer.
Correct. To my knowledge, it was not tested.
Thank you. So do you know, Detective, for a fact, that the defect on my wood floor was caused by the second bullet?
And again, I'm going to object to asked and answered.
Sustained.
When we looked at the projectiles yesterday, the one from the baseboard clearly had white paint on it from the baseboard. Is that correct?
Baseboard or the drywall, perhaps.
Okay, but we all saw the white paint. Is that correct?
There was a white marking on it.
Was that tested for the white paint?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
There was no decision made to have it tested.
Because it was logical that it was in the baseboard where the baseboard was painted white, right?
It was very clear that it had passed through your husband and lodged in the baseboard, and upon recovery, there was no deformation to it, indicating that it was a straight-on impact or relatively close, so that it embedded itself into the baseboard.
Correct. So it wasn't tested because it really didn't need to be, in your opinion.
Correct.
Okay, that's fair. Next, we looked at the projectile that, according to you, made the defect in my wood floor. Is that correct?
I don't understand your question. Next, we look at it, but I don't see anything.
Oh, we saw the projectile. Can I find out what exhibit that was?
Your paralegal has all those photographs.
Can we use the actual exhibit?
She can approach and.
Okay.
and Are you looking for the actual projectile?
Yes.
Do you want her to hand that to the witness?
Is that 239? Okay. Detective, for the record, you're looking at Exhibit 239, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the projectile that we are talking about that you claimed made the divot in my wood floor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So was that projectile was not tested, is that correct?
Your Honor,
Is that what you
I'm
said?
going to object to asked and answered at least 3 times.
Sustained.
Does that projectile look pristine to you?
No, ma'am. As I've previously testified, it is slightly deformed.
What side is it deformed on? What part about it is deformed?
The back end, the heel area, is compressed a little bit so that it's now oval as opposed to circular.
And that would indicate what?
That would indicate that as the bullet struck something firm on its side, it compressed, and then it continued on moving.
Okay. So that's what you mean by a shored wound. It hit up against something, is that correct?
The terminology as it's been described to me is it's the skin is against a firm surface. So in this particular case, the floor would be the firm surface. So as it's entering or exiting your husband and starting to try to enter the floor is forcing the bullet to kind of ricochet, but the body's still keeping it in place. So it's now deforming a little bit, and it's still expending its energy to escape from underneath the body.
Okay. And if my husband was in fact laying on the floor, how did it get out from under his body? Wouldn't it have gotten stuck under? That's my question. Just
what?
could you explain that to me?
I think I just did. So the bullet is a full metal jacket. It still has its energy. Until it starts striking things to cause resistance to it, to slow it down, it's going to expend its energy at a normal rate. I think I just lost the mic, I'm not sure.
No, it's on.
Okay. When it starts striking firm objects, then it'll start bleeding the energy away. And in this particular case, as it's exiting your husband's body, it's impacting bone, it's impacting the flesh that's compressed against the floor, and it's impacting the floor now. So there is going to be a lot of resistance against that. Now, where it exited, it's still not free to just fly like the one that went through his chest and out the back. It's still semi-trapped between your husband's body and the floor, so that's going to cause even more energy drain until it comes to rest.
And how far away from my husband's shoulder was that bullet fragment found? The projectile, I guess.
When it was found, I don't know the exact measurement away from it. I would say a foot or more, maybe.
Okay, so that's what you're talking about the energy. It still had energy to keep moving. Is
Yes.
that correct?
It had enough to escape from being under the body.
Okay. So because of what you saw at the scene, and you state in your report that it was your suspicion that that's what had happened, was that my husband was supine on the floor, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So was it your suspicion from the start of this investigation that led you to not confirm any other alternative?
What other alternative, ma'am? My job was to collect the information and put it together with the information that was being collected in the interviews. The information from the interviews did not completely match everything that I had learned at the scene.
Okay, well, let's see. You did not test the wood floor, is that correct?
I'm going to object again to asked and answered multiple times.
Sustained.
You did not test the projectile, is that correct?
I'm going to again object to asked and answered multiple times, and I'm going to move to start striking every question.
Sustained.
You did not investigate my husband's shirt.
And object again to asked and answered multiple times.
Sustained.
Did you call Aloha Carolina and ask them about the fabric of my husband's shirt?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that you made an assumption early on and only investigated the things that supported that assumption?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Remember in your report where you stated that the bullet strike to the abdomen had an upward trajectory, passing through the left lung before exiting near the left shoulder?
Yes.
Okay. Could that upward trajectory have been caused by my husband falling backwards and the bullet hitting the abdomen and going upwards and exiting his shoulder as he hit the floor?
No, not in my opinion.
Okay. Detective Coons, on July 11th, 2019, were you at the Chandler Police Department during my interview?
No, ma'am.
Were you there that morning when we were brought into the Chandler Police Department at all?
No, ma'am. I was at the scene.
Okay. I thought you didn't get to the scene until 11:45.
No, that was when we actually obtained the search warrant. It was about a little after 11:45. I was
Okay.
already at the scene shortly after 9 o'clock.
Okay. Did you see the injury on the back of Alex's head with your own eyes?
I did not take a close look at it. I saw the paper towel that he was holding against his head.
But you did not see the wound itself?
No.
Okay. Are you aware if Alex's hands were swabbed for gunshot residue?
There would have been no reason to swab for gunshot residue.
Why is that?
He had already stated that he was the shooter.
He had stated it?
To my knowledge, that's how the information was provided to me.
Okay. Are you aware if my hands were swabbed for gunshot residue?
I am not.
Okay. Are you aware if my daughter's hands were swabbed for gunshot residue?
I am not.
Do you know for a fact that Alex shot the gun in question?
Based on the information provided, that is what I have, yes.
Do you know that for a fact?
Just with the information that's been provided. I can't tell you one way or another if there's another shooter because the evidence does not show that there was.
Okay. So all you really know for sure, after your 5 years of investigation, is that my husband was shot 2 times, 1 by that particular gun, 2 with those particular bullets, at my residence, and that he passed away as a result of that. Would that be correct?
Oversimplified, there is a lot more information that is available to us for that.
Is that correct? Is that question correct?
Those are some known facts, yes, but that is not all we know.
So you can't really tell me for sure who shot him, can you?
Well, as we've established, I was not present when it happened. I can only go with the facts of what people have said and what the evidence shows.
Okay. You don't really know what time he was shot, do you?
Actually, no, I don't.
Okay. You don't really know if he was falling back or lying supine on the floor, do you?
Yes, I do.
You don't really know what time my husband actually passed away, do you?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Thank you. No more questions.
All right, redirect.
Your Honor, I still have stuff that she
You
gave.
can pass those to, let's have your paralegal get the report that you gave him, but I'll take Exhibit 239, is it? Do you need any of the photos? They're over there.
Yes, thank you. All right, Detective, I know we started yesterday, so I'm going to kind of go back through a few different areas, all right?
Yes, ma'am.
In terms of just understanding your role working with crime scene techs, you had testified yesterday that they are often the ones who actually pick up the item of evidence and put it in a bag, correct?
Frequently, yes.
Are you there observing them as they do that?
Yes.
You're not just wandering around outside drinking a coffee while they're processing the house?
No, ma'am.
So every item that we've brought in is something that you observed, you were there as they were documented and collected?
Correct.
And some of them, like the gun, you actually had to make safe before it could be collected.
Actually, Detective Duncan is the one that made it safe, but I was present for those things.
Okay. You were asked about the backyard being searched. When you have other people searching the house, and I think you'd said it was a collaborative event, if someone observes something, do they bring it to your attention as the scene agent?
Yes, if I'm asking somebody to do a search for me to help out with a larger area, it is their responsibility to bring it forward to me if they discover something that they think is important.
And if they see something, you would then go out and observe it yourself?
Yes.
Okay. We had talked about the gun yesterday and the ejection port. See if this will be visible here. What do we see right here?
So that is the ejection port.
So when we're talking about how a semi-automatic gun works, and you were talking about the ejection to the right, is that in this gun indicated by the opening where that ejection port is, the side that it's on of the gun?
The opening is part of how it'll indicate where it ejects. Also the extractor, which is a small lever behind the ejection port, is what grabs the casing to pull it out. And internally there's going to be an ejector that it's usually a small pinpoint that kicks it, and the springs basically flip it out.
So all of that was what made you understand which way the casings would have ejected out of this gun.
Yes.
Now, you told us that that every gun can be slightly different if it's more upward, more outward, and you are unaware for this gun what that ejection would be like.
Correct.
I'm going to go back to your diagram. This is Exhibit 5. Are you able to, by looking at the measurements that you took, give us an estimate of the distance between those two casings that you have listed here as 9 and 10?
My estimation would be a couple feet.
And I guess, would your measurements, did you take measurements of where those were?
I took measurements from the reference points to triangulate it, but I did not measure distance between each object to the other objects.
So the measurements that we see, I'm going to take it out of here. On the second page of your report, are those triangulations that you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So are we able to extrapolate from this any distance between those two, or we are left with what you recall at this point?
You're left with what I recall, but I also, on my diagram, I put a reference line or dimension line. It's near the north-south indicator, and that helps somebody who's looking at it get an idea of what a measurement might be in the diagram.
Okay. And is that this line up here?
Correct.
Okay. There was a lot of questions about where the shooter might have been at the time when this shooting occurred. Start with 19 while I look for a different perspective. But in this house, you have talked about a rounded wall. Can you tell us where you're talking about for that? And I'm going to put up 14. So on 14, what is this rounded wall that you're talking about when you're referring to the location or potential location, let me say the general location of the shooter?
So the rounded wall is at the south end of the main room that we're in, where the body's at. And it's also directly across from the hallway that runs to the 3 bedrooms and the hall bathroom.
So is that this wall that we see in Exhibit 14 right here?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when we are talking about a gun being fired and casings ejecting, as someone who has fired guns before, have you fired them on where the casings are landing on a hard surface?
Yes.
Do casings bounce and roll?
They do.
So is the location of these casings, do they tell us exactly where they initially landed when they ejected?
No.
This is just where they ended up or stopped.
It's where we found them.
They could have been kicked at some point as well.
Yes.
Okay. When you are looking at this scene, are you relying upon these physical items of evidence to reach your opinion?
They would be some of it, yes.
And then are you relying on your training and experience in conjunction with observing the physical evidence as well as the injuries to Charles?
That would also be good pieces of the puzzle.
And are you able to give us the exact location of this shooter?
No, ma'am.
Are you giving us a general area of the shooter?
Yes, ma'am.
And for the shot that goes through Charles's chest and out his back, where is the general area that you are saying the shooter was located?
The shooter would have been located somewhere in the opening to where the kitchen and the hallway is, in close proximity to the rounded corner as well.
Okay, I put up Exhibit 16 here. So somewhere in this area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you were asked a lot about the autopsy report and stippling. You were provided with a copy of it by the defendant, correct?
It was never provided to me.
You weren't allowed to look at a copy of it?
The report that she gave me was my report from the channel report system, not the medical examiner.
Have you ever looked at the autopsy report?
I have.
Did you, in regards to the injury to Charles's chest, the entrance wound, ever see the word stippling used there?
No, it was not in the report.
When you were reading that, did you interpret the way that Dr. Baumgartner wrote that to mean abrasions related to the actual entrance wound of the gunshot?
That's how I interpreted it.
Does that mean that Dr. Baumgartner didn't mean stippling?
I don't know medical jargon so well, so he could have very well meant it with how he wrote it, but to me it did not come across that way.
Okay. And when you were at the autopsy, you don't recall him ever telling you about the stippling?
Not in that word, no.
But you were there at the autopsy, correct?
Yes, I was.
Are you in the room with him, like right there next to him?
No, we are actually mandated to stay in the, I guess it's the viewing area of that particular location.
There's a window between you and he's in a different room?
Yes.
So you also were asked about Dr. Baumgartner saying in a defense interview that because of this, what you've now been told is stippling around that gunshot wound to the chest, that the shooter or the gun being used could have been 2 to 4 or so feet away. Do you recall being told that?
Yes, I do.
All right. I have a little thing here, 24 inches. So 2 feet is 24 inches?
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if I can approach or if I have to have my,
Go ahead.
thank you. So when we're talking about 2 feet, then from the wound on his chest,
The indicator would be from the muzzle to the chest.
so that distance is 2 feet.
Yes.
Understanding that additional information that the defendant provided you, that Dr. Baumgartner advised during a defense interview, does that alter your opinion in any way as to where the shooter would have been, the general location of the shooter for this shot to his chest?
No, it actually makes sense with the completed trajectory that ended up in the baseboard.
So those being 2 feet away from Charles Vallow when the end of the gun to his chest did not seem so far away that, or so close that it didn't fit in with your opinion.
Yeah, 2 to 4 feet would be certainly consistent with what I saw.
So he's 2 to 4 feet away from him in this area.
Away from that area, yes. Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the floor itself that you observed underneath Charles's shoulder after he was removed, okay? I'm putting up Exhibit 244. That's the actual piece of wood. And Your Honor, can I actually publish this to the jury and have them
Yes.
look at it? Thank you. If I can have just all of them look at that, and then I'll ask a couple questions. So, Detective, in looking at the floor itself, you told us that you looked through the whole floor in that room to see if you found any similar types of defects, correct?
Correct.
Did you find other defects on the floor, just period?
There are other imperfections.
You had testified on cross that there was something about the freshness of the defect itself. Were you able to sort of feel a difference in the wood grain where that indentation is that we see in Exhibit 59 and in the actual piece 244 than you observed in other defects across the floor?
Yes, it did appear to be different than the other imperfections or defects.
Was there anything about the defect itself that indicated a path of travel?
Yes, there is a kind of a linear mark to it, and you'll also see at the in this particular photograph that there's like a slight semicircular edge as it exits towards the top right.
And was there anything about that pattern itself, both the depth, the freshness, the location of it, that made you feel it was consistent with a bullet strike?
All of those factors help make it consistent with it, not to mention the location of the projectile that was in close proximity to this defect.
So let's talk a little bit about those projectiles. I'm putting Exhibit 40 up here. Do we see the projectile over here next to Charles Vallow?
Yes.
Now, were you aware when you were given this scene that fire had already been there?
Yes, I was.
Pretty obvious because of all the medical devices, right?
They left a tail.
And if you were advised that fire has testified that they rolled Mr. Vallow onto his right side towards the west, would that have then exposed his left shoulder there?
It should have.
Do you know whether or not that bullet was ever moved at all personally?
Well, I have no idea what the condition of that bullet was until I physically saw it.
Okay. Now, the location of this bullet here on the floor next to Charles, why is that significant in determining whether or not Charles was upright or down?
Well, it's significant because for this particular shot, he would have basically been vulnerable, if you will.
Let me ask it this way. Why is that significant in making your opinion that he was on the floor versus upright for the shot to the abdomen?
Oh, okay. The angle of entry into the abdomen and exit is not consistent with him being upright or any other way other than lying on the floor. The defect is where the defect is, and the bullet, as demonstrated with the chest shot, had enough energy to exit. And had he been any other direction, I would not have expected the defect to be right underneath the body.
So if someone is standing and someone's on the floor shooting upward, where would the bullet go?
Well, if he's standing and the shooter is horizontal, then the bullet would go towards the ceiling or high wall area.
So this idea that it would end up on the floor below him or right next to him, would that fit with that scenario?
Of him standing, no.
When you're looking at the bullets and the location of them in this scene, we had that other projectile, and I'm going to put 20 up here, that went into the baseboard on the east side of the room, correct?
Yes.
When you talk about someone being standing upward and the bullet being slowed, how can you explain to us how this bullet landing over here and embedding itself in that baseboard is consistent with Charles being standing upright when he was shot?
It fits the dimension of the room. It fits the wound path through the chest and exiting the back, because the exit is lower than the entry. So there's already a downward motion to it. I know that the bullet struck the spine prior to exiting, so that would bleed even some more energy from it and potentially cause it to start dropping as well.
So the wound itself was slightly downward,
Yes.
and then given the distance away from Charles, this would be, in your mind, consistent with having gone through him in that chest to back exit downward angle.
Correct.
So that really only left one other bullet in the room to explain the other injury,
Yes, ma'am.
and that's the one that was right next to him.
Correct.
You were asked whether or not you made assumptions about the shooting, how it occurred. When you got to this scene, you were given a basic briefing, right?
Yes.
How do you start looking at a scene when you're observing the evidence there?
I do an overall assessment of the scene. I apply the initial information that's given to me, and I progress from there.
Are you, if the physical evidence is what it is, are you trying to find a new way to make that work?
No, I let the evidence speak for itself.
So here, the physical evidence is one bullet is in the baseboard, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so that had to come from somewhere that makes sense for that trajectory, right?
Yes.
And then the other bullet is right next to Charles.
Correct.
And so, again, you're looking at all the physical evidence and how that fits together.
Yes.
And in this case, in your opinion, the shot through Charles's chest that exited his back, did the evidence support to you that he was standing up for this shot?
Yes.
And in your opinion, looking at all the physical evidence from the casings, the projectile, the injuries to Charles, was that consistent with the shooter? And now that you know the stippling, with the shooter being still in that sort of kitchen hallway-ish area when he fired that shot at Charles?
Yes.
And in your opinion, again, looking at the casings, the injuries to Charles, the location of the projectile, as well as the shored wound, and the lack of stippling, does that support your opinion that Charles was on the ground when he was shot in the abdomen?
Yes, it does.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Are there any questions for this witness from the jury? I'm not seeing any. You can step down.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi, my name's Nancy Jo Hancock.
And do you go by Nancy Jo?
I do.
How old are you?
61.
And do you currently work?
I'm self-employed
Do you live here in Arizona?
in Mesa, yes.
Were you born and raised here?
Born and raised here.
Do you have your own children?
5.
Do you have grandchildren?
15.
Busy person.
Yes.
I'm going to direct you to a person by the name of Charles Vallow. Did you ever meet a person by that name?
I did.
How did you meet him?
I'm divorced. I was on an LDS dating site, and when new members join, it tells you this is someone new. And he sent me a message, and we began messaging.
Initially, did you just talk to him do you talk through the website? How does that work?
Through the website at first, and then he asked for my phone number, and then we were texting and talking on the phone as well.
Do you recall approximately when you met him?
It was early July, I believe the 3rd.
And so you said you guys would text. Was this,
A lot.
what's a lot to you?
Charles was a texter and a talker, and he was good at banter, and there were hundreds of texts by the time I had met him.
You said you talked on the phone with him as well?
For hours.
Did you have a conversation with him once that lasted almost 3 hours?
Probably more than one, yes.
When you met Charles in early July, did you know he was still married?
He told me he was in the process of a divorce.
Okay. Did you know whether or not he was living with his wife at that time?
He was in Houston. His soon-to-be ex-wife was here. When he came to Arizona, he was meeting a realtor to find a place to live when he was here as well.
So when you're first meeting him, he's out of state, but he has a connection here to Arizona, so you keep talking to him?
Correct.
As you guys are talking and texting, did you eventually have enough interest that you decided you wanted to meet him?
Yeah.
Did you know what Charles did for a living?
Life insurance and something with money. I try not to have that be the focus when I'm getting to know somebody, so that I get to know them for them and not what they do for a living.
Okay, so you didn't really care too much about
No.
what his job was?
No.
Did you know he traveled a lot for work?
Yes.
As you and Charles are talking and texting, just sort of yes or no, can you tell us, did he get very detailed about his life with you?
Yes.
Did you know if Charles had children?
Yes.
Just yes or no again, did you talk to him about his wife specifically?
A lot.
Did he mention his wife by name?
Yes.
What did you believe his wife's name was?
Lori Vallow?
Have you ever met Lori Vallow?
No.
Again, just sort of yes or no. Did Charles talk to you about
Your Honor.
why?
Objection, leading. Objection.
I haven't heard the question yet. Go ahead.
So just yes or no. Did Charles talk to you about why he
Leading
was
is yes or no.
No, leading is a question that suggests the answer, so she can answer yes or no.
So again, just yes or no. Did Charles talk to you about why he was separated from his wife?
Yes.
Based upon your discussions, how long did you think there had been issues going on between Charles and his wife?
For several months, but more intensely since the beginning of that year was 2019, so since the beginning of that year.
You told us that Charles talked to you let me ask you, yes or no, did he talk to you in great detail about his relationship with Lori Vallow?
Yes.
You told us you met on an LDS dating site, right?
Correct.
So are you a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
I am.
Was there anything that you were hearing that you thought were outside of your beliefs?
A lot of things.
As Charles was telling you these things about his wife, can you tell us his demeanor? What his voice was like, what his attitude was like as he's talking about that?
I just remember thinking that he was strangely calm and still kind towards Lori, even through what they were going through.
You told us you were aware he had a child. Did you know where that child lived, who the child lived with?
Yes,
Who was that?
he was living with Lori at that time.
You have.
He had
this-
older children as well, but the young one was living with Lori.
You have these conversation with Charles about his wife and these things that to you seem outside the LDS religion. Why do you keep talking to him?
Well, he was very charming and kind and funny and very clever, really good banter. A lot of craziness going on around him, but he seemed pretty awesome.
Now, you guys had just known each other for a few days. Did you think you and Charles were exclusive?
Heavens no.
So would you be surprised to learn that he was talking to other people on other websites?
Not at all.
Did he in fact share some of that with you?
He did. He shared some pictures of some woman that had sent him that were quite scanty, and then proceeded to ask him for money, and thought how funny that was, that that's what people were doing online.
Did you eventually meet Charles in person?
I did.
And how many times did you get to meet him in person?
Just once.
What day was that?
He was flying in from Houston, and we had arranged to go to dinner that night. His plane was delayed, and so I met him that night on the 10th of July.
July 10th, was that 2019?
Correct.
And was that then here in Arizona that you met?
It was.
You said that you had original plans to meet and they got pushed back?
Yeah, his plane was delayed, so we met a little later than we were supposed to.
Where did you guys meet? What did you do?
At the Keg restaurant by Santan Mall, and we ate, but we talked until the restaurant closed. We were the last people there.
So you shut the place down?
We did. I finally looked around and I realized that we were the only ones there, and told them we probably should leave, and then we went outside and talked by my truck for another 45 minutes or so.
Based upon everything you had heard, was Charles coming in to see you, or was there some other reason he was in Arizona?
Charles was ecstatic to see JJ. He was coming to see JJ, so excited to take him to school the next morning. He was also coming to look for a place to live. He had an appointment to meet a realtor friend after he had taken JJ to school. And then he was also supposed to meet with Lori's brother, Adam.
So you and Charles had this evening on the 10th. Were you going to meet again?
Yeah, we were supposed to meet up in the late afternoon after he got through with the things that I just said.
So did you have a set time for the next
No.
day? Can you describe Charles? Was he a fit man? What was his size?
Very fit and into physical fitness. And while we were talking, I know that he was swimming. I got to go to the gym, and yeah, very, very fit, strong.
When you were talking with Charles on July 10th that evening, let me ask first, do you recall about what time you ended up meeting him?
It was around 7. I got there first, and but it was right around 7, between 7 and 7:15, I'd say.
And do you recall about how long you guys were together until you finally
Well, the
left?
restaurant closed at 10, and they were closed and no one else was there, so it was after that we left. And then, like I said, we stood by my truck and talked for another half hour, 45 minutes after that.
So a later evening.
Yes.
Can you tell us, you said that you understood he was going to go see his son. What was his demeanor about with regards to JJ and seeing his son?
Like a kid on Christmas morning. He was very excited to see JJ.
You had talked about his demeanor when he would talk about his wife. On that evening or ever, did you ever hear him swear or use derogatory names or anything like that towards Lori Vallow?
I was surprised with the details that he was describing to me, how kindly he still spoke about Lori, and his hope was that she would be a great mom for JJ.
Did that stand out to you?
A lot.
Why?
Most men that you date are not nearly so kind about their ex and describe them in more derogatory ways and don't speak so kindly. And I remember just thinking how odd in a good way it was that he was not speaking in a derogatory way about Lori.
So that made an impression on you.
It did.
During any of your conversations with Charles, did you ever learn that he had a life insurance policy?
I did.
As you are talking, did Charles really just tell you a lot about his life?
A lot about his life, yes.
Were you almost surprised at the amount of detail of his life that you learned?
Yeah.
Did you understand whether or not any changes had been made by Charles to the life insurance policy?
He told me that he had changed his beneficiary to his sister Kay, and as he was proceeding to tell me some of the things that were going on, I suggested to him that maybe he should let Lori know that he had changed the beneficiary on his life insurance to Kay.
Why would you tell him that?
Because of the things that he was describing to me and his concerns for his safety and the thought that money would come into play.
Do you recall where you were when you made that suggestion to Charles?
We were sitting at dinner at the Keg.
So this is on July 10th.
Correct.
What was his demeanor like when you told him that?
He kind of chuckled and said that he probably should. Said that was a good idea.
You told us that you don't know Lori Vallow, correct?
I do not.
Would it be fair to say that you sort of have no beef in this case?
I have no beef in this case.
Do you know any of Charles's family back then?
No.
Any of Lori Vallow's family back then?
No.
When you, I guess, left Charles after talking in the parking lot that evening, you told us that you had sort of unformalized plans to see Charles the next day.
Correct.
Was there like someone would call someone, or how was that supposed to go?
He just said that he needed to do the things that I said, to have a morning with JJ, find a place to live, meet up with Lori's brother Adam, and, then we would meet up somewhere for a late lunch or something.
Did you ever try to reach him on July 11th of 2018?
I did.
Did you try texting him ever?
Around 11-ish in the morning, I texted him and asked how his morning with JJ had been.
Did you get a response back?
I did not.
Did you try calling him?
A couple hours later, I called once, yes.
Did you get a call back?
I did not.
What were you thinking when you didn't hear from Charles after you spent this night?
I was puzzled how I had misread what I had thought been a good date so wrong that he would not even take the courtesy to reply. Wondered why, but just figured that was what his decision was.
So on July 11th, when you're not hearing back from Charles, did you know that he had been shot and killed?
No.
Did you later learn that Charles had been killed from seeing something on TV?
I was watching TV in December, I believe, and his picture came on the screen, and it said that he was dead.
when you learned that in December, that he had been killed, did you learn when that had happened? Did you try to investigate?
I did. They said the date, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's right about when I went out with him. And so I went to my phone and thought I probably had deleted our text conversations. If I'm not dating someone and I text, I usually delete the thread, but I had not. And I had the conversations, and then I realized that I was with him until 10:45 that night and that he died at 7:30-ish the next morning.
And did you later then talk with the police in April of 2020 to tell them what you knew about this case?
I did.
Thank you. The state has no other questions.
Cross?
Nancy Jo, right?
Correct.
And we have not met before,
We have
correct?
not?
Okay. And you stated that your husband, or my husband, told you that he was going through a divorce. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you have any way to verify that?
No, I didn't try to verify that.
Okay. So did it surprise you later to find out that we were not in the process of a divorce?
Charles was in the process of a divorce.
He was not in the process of a divorce. Did it surprise you to find that out? You've seen it all on TV where we're not getting divorced.
Okay.
So on the website that you met him, did he say he was divorced?
I'm not certain.
Would you have gone on a date with him if he would have said he was married?
If I would have realized how married he still was, maybe not. But I just met for dinner. I wasn't sleeping with him or anything.
Do you go on dates with married men?
I'm going to
Not
object
naturally?
argumentative. And I'm going to also object under 611 for harassment.
All right. I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, do I not have a right to cross-examine this witness for what she has already testified to?
You can cross-examine her about what she's testified to.
So you did go on a date with a married man,
I went on a date with Charles.
but you did not know he was married.
I knew his divorce was not final.
His divorce was not started.
Okay.
Okay. So in your text messages, you asked Charles if he was a good kisser. Is that correct?
Maybe, sure.
Did he answer that text message?
I'm
gonna
sure.
object to
I'm sure he did.
relevance. Again, 611 harassment.
I'll sustain the objection for relevance and hearsay.
So are you trying to tell me and this jury that you went on one date with my husband and he told you all the details of our lives?
I'm telling you the truth, and that's what I know.
So you spent your whole date getting to know each other, talking about me?
Don't flatter yourself. No, we did not spend the whole time talking about you.
You knew a lot about me, right?
I knew what I've testified to.
What else did you talk about on your date?
Lots of things.
Like what, for instance?
Life, kids, the church, lots of things.
Okay. Did he tell you about anything about our other 4 children?
Yes,
So you knew that we did have 5 children as well?
I did.
Okay. Did he talk to you about my daughter Tylee?
He did.
Did he talk about his relationship with her?
I don't recall that.
Did he talk about the contention in his relationship with my daughter Tylee?
I don't recall that.
I'm sure you don't.
Then I'm going to object to comments by the defendant made after questions testifying.
Let's sustain the objection.
On your date, you talked about my husband was a life insurance salesman, is that correct?
I knew he did something with money and insurance, but I really didn't know the details of what he did for work. Like I said, I don't ask the details about what someone does for work when I'm trying to get to know someone.
But you knew that he sold life insurance, you stated that.
I believe that I had a vague understanding that he did something with insurance.
And then he brought that up again at dinner.
No, we didn't talk about his work at dinner.
I thought you said you did talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said you did talk about that he changed the life insurance policy at dinner.
Well, you were asking me if we talked about that he sold insurance, which that didn't happen. But yes, he did tell me that he changed the beneficiary of his life insurance policy at dinner.
Did he tell you how much his life insurance policy was for?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
$1 million.
Did he tell you how much my life insurance policy was for?
I do not recall.
You don't recall?
We didn't talk about you very much in that vein.
When did you talk to him about me very much then? If it wasn't at dinner, was it in your text messages?
We were talking about what he was going through in the process of separating from you, not about what your life insurance policy was worth. And we talked about you on the phone, and when I say you, meaning what he was doing as he was going through this separation.
So let me understand. You were dating some different men on this website, right? From the websites.
Sure.
Would you say it was common for men to be talking so much about their supposed ex-wives during their conversations with a potential...
It's actually very common.
Really?
Really.
Interesting.
And again, Your Honor, I'm
All right.
going to object to the defendant making comments after her questions.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I won't do that again.
All right, please stop.
I'll just ask the questions.
Thank you.
So there were some text messages between you and my husband after the dinner on July 10th. Is that correct?
Correct.
What time would those text messages have occurred?
After dinner,
What time?
10:45-ish.
10:45 to what?
I'm not certain, ma'am. After dinner.
10:45 to midnight? Maybe?
I just told you I don't know. Maybe.
What did you discuss in those text messages?
And I'm going to object to relevance again. If there's a specific area.
Sustain.
You testified a minute ago that Charles told you a lot of things about his wife. You didn't say ex-wife, but you said wife. Is that correct?
Okay, sure.
What were a lot of things?
The things that I've testified to.
Can you be more specific?
Am I allowed to do a narrative then?
Let's go on sidebar.
Ms. Hancock, you said that you had seen on TV that my husband had passed away. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you indicated after that you saw my sister-in-law, Kay Woodcock, on that show, and you reached out to her. Is that correct?
I didn't indicate that, but that is correct. I reached out to Kay after I saw that Charles had died.
Okay. And did you do that through Facebook or?
I did.
Social media? Okay. How many times between that first contact and now have you and Kay Woodcock communicated?
I've spoken to her just once. I've texted her here and there regarding, I've texted her here and there about other things. I don't know what I can say.
Okay. How many times have you texted her?
I have no idea.
Like more than 10?
Maybe.
Okay. Have you ever turned over those communications to the state?
No.
Did they ask you for them?
No.
Okay. Did you ever turn over the text conversations you had with my husband to the state?
I was never asked, but I understand that they retrieved them via having them through Charles' phone.
Okay.
I would have had I been asked.
Okay. Did you turn over any other communications that you had with anyone else regarding this case to the state?
I don't believe I've had any other regarding this case to turn over to anybody, so no.
Okay. How many times have you spoken to this prosecutor?
To Ms. Kay,
Yes, to Ms. Kay.
I met with her once in person and one other phone call, and then just text messages about the logistics of being here today.
Okay. How many text messages would you say?
I have no idea.
More than 10?
I know court was running behind, so she had to text me to come at a different time. Probably counting yesterday and today to redo the time, more than 10, yes. Prior than that, probably no.
Okay. Did you have a meeting with her to prepare for this testimony?
I met with her once,
How long was that meeting?
an hour, maybe an hour and a half.
Okay. Was anyone else there?
No.
Have you ever spoken to my brother, Adam?
Yes, but only because I ran into him at my grandson's pickleball tournament the other day.
And how did you know that was him?
Because I've seen him on media via the situation surrounding you.
So you initiated a conversation with him?
I just said hi, and he asked me who my grandson was, and I pointed it out, and that was the end of it.
So you introduced yourself to him? To my brother?
I don't know that I introduced myself, but maybe.
How would he know who you were?
I don't know that he knew who I was. I knew who he was.
So you went up and talked to him?
I did talk with him, yes.
He didn't call you over, so you went up and talked to him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you were talking to him, you told him you were who?
I told him that my name was Nancy Jo Hancock.
And did he recognize that name from something?
Can I go back and change how I met your brother? I forgot this until right now. So, on a dating app, your brother's picture came up on my dating app. And I sent him a message and said, but he had a different name that he used, not Adam. And so I just sent him a message and said if he was going to use someone else's pictures, he should probably pick someone different than Adam Cox. That's how I met him.
That's how you met my brother, Adam?
Correct.
Do you know what perjury is?
Absolutely.
Can I object, Your Honor, to
Question.
argumentative harassment?
Argumentative.
How long was this conversation that you had with my brother at the pickleball tournament?
A couple of minutes, maybe less.
And how many times had you communicated with him before that?
Only that message on that dating app. Besides that,
One message, one time?
I don't remember. I think he messaged me back, and it didn't continue.
So just the one day then? Maybe several messages in one day?
I might have sent him one other message, but it was just one interaction, and there was nothing further.
And you did not schedule a date with him?
I did not.
Okay. Have you ever spoken to Brandon Boudreau?
Yes.
Okay, when?
He attends the same church that my daughter does, and he happened to be at their house briefly, and I didn't really speak to him. I just knew that that's who he was,
And how did you know who he was?
because my daughter told me.
And who did she say he was
Brandon Boudreau.
in relation to me?
She knows the story, and I know the story, so she just had to tell me that his name was Brandon Boudreau.
That he was married to my niece? Is that the information that you had?
I know that he was married to your niece, yes.
Okay. Just the association is all I was asking. And you did speak to him that time?
Well, I don't believe I spoke with him.
Okay. But you met him? Or
I don't know that I even met him. I was there, he was there with some other people, and I knew that that's who that was.
So you didn't introduce yourself to him?
I did not.
Okay. Did you speak to any other law enforcement besides Ms. Kay? Not that she's law enforcement, but did you speak to any other law enforcement about this case or be interviewed?
Yes.
Who? Who did you speak with?
Detective Moffat is who interviewed me. I believe that's... I might have left a message for him. I couldn't tell you who with, but the only one that I spoke to was Detective Moffat, Nathan Moffat.
And when was that interview?
In 2020, I believe in April. A long time ago.
Okay. How long was that interview? About?
It was a telephone interview, and it lasted 45 minutes, I'd say.
Is that the only law enforcement that you spoke to besides the prosecutor?
Yes.
And how long between that interview with Detective Moffat and your first communications with Ms. Kay, how much time passed in between there?
With Trina Kay,
Correct.
I met with her just a month ago, 5 weeks ago, and I gave an interview in 2020, so.
Is that the first communication you had with Ms. Kay was 5 weeks ago?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Hancock, were you aware at the time of your date that I did not know that my husband was on dating websites and dating women?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Were you informed by him that I knew of the situation of us being separated?
Well, he was under the impression you were having an affair, so him moving on was a natural effect from that.
He told you that?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Just to recap, you said that you met my husband Charles, on July 3rd. Is that correct?
Approximately. Did you ever take a day?
And you went on a date with him on July 10th.
Correct.
So that was what, 7 days later?
Approximately.
So would it be fair to say that you knew my husband for a week?
Approximately.
Okay. And then you had no contact with Charles after that, correct?
Well, he was dead, so clearly I didn't have contact with him.
Okay. And it wasn't until you saw that he had passed away on the news that you reached out to anyone, is that correct?
Correct? I didn't know he was dead.
And that was about 6 months later? Is that correct?
I believe it was December, so July to December is 5 months, I believe.
Okay. And then you found Charles' sister, Kay Woodcock, my sister-in-law, yes?
Objection asked and answered.
I'm just going over the timeline, Your Honor.
I'll allow it, go ahead.
So when is the then you're referring to?
So at the 5 months later that you said in December, after that is when you contacted Kay Woodcock?
To express my condolences for her brother passing away, and wanted to let her know that I had had dinner with him that last night and how much he loved JJ and how excited he was to see him the next morning. And just
Thank you, that's enough. I'm just recapping here, and you contacted her through Facebook, is that correct?
And again, asked and answered.
I don't think that was actually asked yet. Overruled, go ahead.
yes, as I said before, I contacted her through Facebook.
Okay. And then sent a few text messages, is that correct?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
This is recap of everything we've already
Right.
gone through.
And then you said you met with police on April 22nd, 2020, is that correct?
I didn't say April 22nd. I said I believed it was sometime in April.
Okay,
And I didn't meet with them. It was a telephone interview.
okay. And that was around 1 year after my husband passed away, is that correct?
Well, July to April would be 10 months, so.
No more questions, Your Honor?
All right, redirect.
Thank you. Did you reach out to the police, or did the police reach out to you after you learned Charles was dead?
I reached out to the police.
Um,
I was surprised, given that if they'd seen his phone, they would see the text communication that we had had, and that we had been at dinner that night before he died.
In terms of speaking with Charles's family, Kay Woodcock, did you know her before this?
No.
Had you heard her name through speaking with Charles?
Yes, from Charles. I knew that he had changed his life insurance to his sister Kay, and he talked quite a bit about Kay and his love for her and the relationship with JJ and how that they had adopted JJ.
So you understood the closeness he had with his sister,
Absolutely.
and you said you reached out to pay your condolences.
I did.
When you learned that Charles was dead, were you shocked?
I was watching the TV and it was talking about a case, and his picture came on the screen, and shocked is an understatement. Yes.
In terms of talking with Kay, have you ever tried to talk to other people to learn about or verify if the stuff that Charles told you is accurate?
No.
Is what you are telling us just what he told you?
What I'm telling you is part of what he told me. There's a lot more.
And did you tell the police all of what he told you? That you could remember at that time, I should say.
I believe, no, I thought I would probably be interviewed again, and it was more an ask-answer format. There was, I remember being surprised that I wasn't interviewed again.
Okay. Because Charles had shared so much with you.
Correct.
In terms of the defendant's brother, Adam, did you ever talk with him about the case?
No.
Through media, did you recognize him?
I
as-
recognized him because I'd seen him on reports. And I knew that he was going to be testifying in this hearing.
When did you see him? When was this interaction?
Like
It was pickleball.
a week and a half ago.
So a week and a half ago, when you see him at a pickleball tournament with your grandkid, you say hi to him?
Basically.
You don't talk at all about the case?
We might have talked about that we were testifying. I don't know. No details for sure.
Okay.
Just a general, and then he saw who my grandson was, and the end.
So nothing about, hey, I'm going to say this, or Charles
absolute-
told me this?
Absolutely not.
When you and I met, did we go through your testimony? Or let me get this straight. Did we go through what you told the police?
Yeah.
Did I indicate to you to just tell the truth,
You told me to tell the truth,
whatever that was?
whatever that was.
You were asked about the fact that you knew Charles for basically a week, right?
Correct.
Did he make an impression on you?
Charles was a large personality. It would be hard not to be impressed by his wit and just gregarious, big personality with his southern accent.
You were asked a lot on cross about you dating a married man.
Correct.
What was your impression of where this relationship was between Charles and Lori Vallow when you and Charles started talking?
Well, I knew that they had separated and that they had reconciled, and I knew he had filed, and then he had recanted that. But he also had met with an attorney to begin the process again, and was very emphatic that he was done with all the craziness.
And was that last time something that you understood to be very recent?
Prior to us meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
When he's talking to you, he's telling you about, you said, sort of the whole year of 2019, correct? But this last understanding that you had of him now going back to a divorce lawyer, was that something you understood to be very recent in time to that July 10th when you're meeting?
Correct.
Okay. And did you understand him to have even met with an attorney?
I believe he told me that, yes.
So that was where you were at.
Yes.
And that's what you understood Charles to be at.
Yes, and I will say, after having dinner with him, I did tell him that no one would want to be serious with him until he was further along in accomplishing that divorce that he was in the process of, including myself.
So even though you knew he was just barely starting now, did you still want to meet with him again?
Yeah, I wouldn't have entertained a serious relationship, but he was fun, and yeah, I would have met with him again.
All right. I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Are there any questions for this witness from the jury? I see at least one question coming down. Ever expressed to you verbally any indications of stress?
Definitely, he was very worried that
I think we'll just keep it with a yes/no answer for this question. Does the defense have follow-up based on that juror question? Does the defendant have follow-up based on that juror question?
Oh, no, Your Honor.
All right, state.
No.
All right, you can step down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Christina Atwood.
How old are you, Christina?
I'm 52.
And if you can get just a little closer, you're very soft to the,
52.
thank you. I know nobody wants to say that loud. Do you live here in Arizona?
Yes,
Did you live here in Arizona in 2019?
I did.
Are you from here?
Not originally.
How long have you been in Arizona?
2009.
I want to start by asking you a little bit about some personal part of your life. Are you a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yes,
Were you raised in that religion?
I was.
As a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, did you ever meet Lori Vallow?
I did.
Do you recall sort of where you first met her? Start with that.
At church.
And do you recall approximately when you first met her?
We moved into that area in 2010, and I'm not sure if their family was there at that time or not, but
Sometime after that?
yes,
And did you know her husband, Charles Vallow?
yes,
Was that also through church?
yes.
Did you initially, well, let me start. Did you know they were married?
Yes.
Did you have more contact with one over the other?
More with Lori than with Charles.
And why was that?
My sons and husband had interaction with Lori through the primary program, and I didn't have much interaction with her before they moved to Hawaii. But when her and Charles had moved to Hawaii, we went on a trip and we stopped to visit, and Charles was not at home, and so we interacted with Lori on that trip.
Okay. Do you see Lori Vallow at that time in the courtroom today?
I'm sorry, what was that?
See Lori Vallow in the courtroom today?
Yes.
And can you point her out and identify what she's wearing?
Purple top and suit coat, dark suit coat.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
It shall.
Okay, so you told us that you met Lori and Charles through the church. Do you know how long you went to church with them before they moved to Hawaii?
I don't recall what year they moved, but I know that we moved to the area in 2010 and we went and visited in 2015.
Okay. And that's, you visited them in
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Yes.
Other than that, well, let me ask you, when you visited Lori in Hawaii, were her kids there with her? That you said they lived there, right?
Yes.
Okay, so did you know at that time how many children were living with Lori and Charles?
2,
And who were they?
JJ and Tylee. I don't know if Tylee was there that weekend. She may have been gone. It might have just been JJ.
But you were familiar with them having those 2 children?
Yes.
Residing with them?
Oh, and I also had known her son before they moved to Hawaii, was in our ward as well. But
and
he wasn't living in Hawaii, I don't believe.
that was, do you know if that was Colby?
Yes,
Was he a son from a prior marriage?
yes.
Did you know any of Charles's children from a prior marriage?
No.
When you went to Hawaii and saw Lori and JJ, how long did you spend a day or weeks? How long were you visiting them?
We visited on a Sunday afternoon for an hour or 2, and then sometime in that week, we got together for a couple of hours on the ocean, just paddleboarding, and that was it.
Had you had social interactions with Lori and Charles prior to going to Hawaii?
Not anything of other than waving or saying hello or something, no.
So mostly it would have been prior to that tied to any church activities or
Right.
things like that?
Correct.
Did you at some point learn that Lori and Charles had moved back to Arizona?
Yes.
How did you learn that?
I'm not positive if it was that I ran into them in the temple, because I recall one time seeing them both at the temple.
Okay. And do you recall if that was around 2018?
Yes.
When you said you ran into them, you're saying both Charles and Lori you saw at the temple.
Yes.
And so you learned they're back in Arizona at this point. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you ever have Lori ask you to go with her to Hawaii?
Yes, she did invite me.
Do you recall when that was?
I believe it was the fall or late summer of 2018, but I'm not positive.
Do you recall ever do you remember being interviewed by the police?
Yes,
And were you interviewed by a couple different detectives?
yes,
In April of 2021, do you remember speaking with a detective, Ron Ball?
yes,
And do you remember telling him that sort of the beginning of the year of 2019 is when Lori asked you if you wanted to go to Hawaii?
could have been, yep,
Does that sound familiar to you?
yes.
Did she tell you why she wanted to go to Hawaii?
No, I don't recall.
Let me ask you this. When you spoke with the police back in 2020, was your memory better at that point about all of what
For
was going
sure.
on? Now that it's 2025, has your memory faded as to some of the details?
Yes,
Would listening to a portion of your interview about that help potentially refresh your recollection?
yes.
And Your Honor, if I can have my paralegal go up with Exhibit 282.
Go ahead.
If you can just listen to this portion and see if that refreshes your recollection as to why Lori was asking you to go to Hawaii and when. Was that you talking to the detective about this sort of time period in January where Lori's asking you to go to Hawaii and there's a lot of things going on there?
Yes, I recall that. I actually remembered the invitation being prior to that, and what I was referring to there was something else.
Okay. So there was a prior time you had gone to Hawaii to see Lori and a prior invite, correct?
No, I'd just gone in 2015 with my family.
Okay.
That's the only time
That you went there with
that I
her?
went there, yes.
Okay. So having listened to that recording, did it refresh your recollection about Lori inviting you to Hawaii in sort of the January of 2019 period?
Yes, but I didn't say there that I was invited to go, and I thought that that was previous to that time, but at some point in either the fall or the spring there, I thought it was the fall, winter, she invited me to go to Hawaii,
Okay.
and I wasn't able to go.
When, well, let me ask you. So in January of 2019, did Lori reach out to you about some things that were going on in her life?
Yes,
Did she talk to you about her marriage?
she shared that she was upset with Charles.
And did she indicate whether or not she was still living with him?
She had indicated that she was not with him at the time.
Did she indicate that she had gone to Hawaii?
Yes.
And did she indicate that she was not telling anyone that she was there?
She indicated that she was keeping it, that there wasn't very many people she was sharing it with, yes.
Okay. Did she indicate that Charles was back in Texas?
Yes.
Did she indicate that Charles had JJ with him in Texas?
Yes.
Did she indicate that her daughter Tylee was staying with her brother Alex?
Yes.
Did she indicate that Charles had tried to take her temple recommend away, and this was one of the reasons she left?
Yes.
And was it her, did she tell you that she didn't want Charles to know where she was?
I don't recall.
So if you had said that to the police back in April of 2021, would your memory have been better back
For
then?
sure.
Do you contest that you told the police back then that she was trying to make sure that Charles didn't know where she was?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Would you, if you had told the police back in April of 2021 that Lori told you she didn't want Charles to know where she was, would you have been truthful back then?
For
telling
sure,
him that?
yes.
Okay. Do you know how long she stayed in Hawaii?
I don't.
Did you ever become aware of her going to Idaho as well?
No. Not until December of 2019.
Do you know how long she stayed, how long she didn't let Charles know where she was?
I don't recall.
At some point, did you learn she was back in Arizona?
Yes.
And did she reach out to you to invite you to any groups?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when the first time it was that you met with her in some group format in 2019?
I believe it was spring 2019, maybe February.
And do you recall, were there other people at that meeting?
Yes.
Do you recall who was there?
Yes.
Who was it?
Zulema, Melanie Gibb, Nicole Earl, and Serena Sharp.
Who organized that? Or who invited you? Let me ask that. Did Lori invite you, or did one of these other women invite you?
I don't recall.
Do you recall whose house it was at?
It was at Zulema's.
Okay. And did you know at that time if Lori and Charles were still separated?
Could you say that
Sure.
again?
Did you know at this meeting if Lori and Charles were still separated, living in different homes?
Yes, I believe so.
Did you know who was caring for JJ at that time?
Yes, I believe she was at Alex's.
JJ?
Oh, sorry, JJ. I believe JJ was in Texas.
Still with Charles?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a yes?
Yes.
And then you said Tylee was still staying with her uncle Alex?
Yes.
Did you know where Lori was living at that time?
With Alex.
Had you met these other women prior to this meeting in February-ish of 2019?
The only other person that I knew was Nicole Earl.
Okay. So this was the first time you were meeting the person whose house it was at, Zulema?
Correct.
The first time that you were meeting Melanie Gibb?
Correct.
And the first time, you said Serena, is that Serena Sharp?
Correct.
Was there anything that Lori said at this meeting in February-ish of 2019 that she said about Charles that stood out to you?
She was concerned about dark spirits plaguing him.
Did she in fact tell you that he was possessed by dark spirits?
I don't recall.
Did you recall talking to the police, again, back in April of 2021, and advising them that this is the first time you're hearing that Charles is possessed?
If I said it then yes.
When you were meeting on this weekend, or this weekend, what do you remember about this group meeting? Was it a night, a weekend? How was that?
It was an evening. We may have met twice in the evening that weekend.
Did you know where Serena was from? Like, did she live locally?
She did not. She was visiting from out of state.
When you were meeting at these in February of 2019, do you recall telling police that Lori was talking about Charles being dark or having a dark spirit?
Yes.
And do you recall saying that he was possessed and she had a name for who he was possessed by?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Sure. Do you recall telling the police that he was possessed and she had a name for who he was possessed by?
I don't recall, but believe that I said it.
Would listening to your recording help refresh your recollection as to that?
Yes.
Your Honor, if we can have her listen to Exhibit 200.
Go ahead.
During that meeting, did you overhear Lori talking about Serena in a way that also disturbed you?
Yes.
What do you recall of that?
It was just very negative, and that she didn't believe that Serena was going to be good after all, something to that effect.
Okay. So prior to that meeting, Serena had been at the meeting at Zulema's house,
Yes, just the one.
and she had been on a Zoom meeting, maybe?
Yes.
And then this meeting in June, she was
not.
She was not. And at that point, Lori seemed to be talking negative of her.
Correct.
When you talked to Lori about these statements that you had heard Alex say and her say on the 9th, did you continue to meet up with Lori after that?
No.
Did Lori ever invite you to any more of these gatherings or prayers?
I was invited one time to go for lunch.
When was that?
I believe August.
So between June and August, you did not receive any other invitations?
No.
Did you at some point learn that Charles had been killed?
Yes.
How did you learn that?
I received a text message that he had been killed.
And who did you think had killed Charles?
Originally, when I received the message, I believed it was a brother-in-law of his. And so it was some time before I realized that Alex had been involved.
So initially, you had said when you met with Lori, that you would go to the police. But when you learned Charles was killed, your understanding was it was someone else.
Correct.
So when you learned it was Alex, what was going through your head then?
I had somebody who had visited with Lori about it and had said that,
Without going into their hearsay, let me just
Okay.
ask you this. Had you spoken to someone who was passing along information to you of what they understood had happened?
yes,
Okay. The shooting of Charles by Alex was about a month after you had heard him say he wanted to kill Charles, correct?
yes.
Did you feel like after you confronted Lori that she distanced herself from you?
Yes.
Did that seem to be the same as what you heard and saw happening with Serena?
I don't know.
Okay. On the 9th, you had heard Lori talking negative about Serena, correct?
Yes.
And she hadn't been invited to that meeting.
She lived out of state, so it wasn't surprised that she wasn't invited.
Had she flown in for a previous meeting, though?
Yes,
So,
just the one, the initial one.
in terms of your interactions with Lori, did she ever tell you that she was joking about her husband being possessed?
No,
Did she ever tell you she was joking about him having this dark spirit inhabiting him?
no,
And did she ever, you told us that she told you there was a name for this spirit that you don't recall now, correct?
Yes.
Did she ever tell you she was joking about that?
no.
No other questions. Thank you.
All right, Cross,
No questions, Your Honor.
are there any questions for this witness from the jury? Not seeing any. Ma'am, you can step down.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to recess for the evening. We'll resume tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Again, I'll remind you of the admonition